Welcome to Meet the Author, where you can join in on insightful conversations with best-selling and award-winning indie published authors. Your hosts today are Rob and Joan, who themselves are indie published authors, book publicists, and paranormal investigators with Tampa Bay Spirits, based in Tampa Bay, Florida. Thanks for dropping by. And now, on with the show.
Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Joan. We're so glad that you're here, whether you're watching us live tonight on Wednesday at 7 p.m., or if you're watching a live video, the live video on our Indie Book Source or our YouTube or any one of the other channels that we're on, or if you're listening to us on the podcast. We are really so glad that you decided to be in our audience. We appreciate it. And we've already got some comments. George Dismuke says,
Hey,
okay,
George.
Me and my bruise are here. If you've forgotten, George had surgery last week on his leg, vascular surgery, and it's been really painful and really hard to recuperate from. Paul Hollis says, hi, Rob and Joan. Hi, Paul. How are you? And Marjorie Deering says,
Hey,
present.
Marjorie.
Hi, Marjorie. We're glad that you're here, all of you.
So let's talk about what's coming up.
Okay.
Tomorrow at 9 o'clock Eastern Time here in the U.S. On WDJY 99.1 FM in Atlanta, or on their online. You can listen to the broadcast online, www.wdjyfm.com, and from anywhere. It's episode 27, which is Caleb and Linda Pirtle from back not too long after we started the podcast. So that's going to be broadcasting there. Saturday, the 6th, is episode Rewind. It's novelist Howard Kaplan. That's at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And then next Wednesday is author and psychic John Russell.
Oh.
He's a psychic, certified tarot master, paranormal investigator, and a published author. He also filmed a TV pilot for the History Channel in which he psychically explored the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. Mm-hmm. So he's a pretty interesting character.
He is. He lives here in Florida.
Should be a fun time. The top 5 audio downloads for the last 30 days. Russia's increasing. I hope they don't take over the podcast. Anyway, for the U.S., we're 65% now, but Russia's taken up 22% of our audio downloads. Followed closely, well, not so closely, 6% is Bangladesh, and 3% was India, and 3% Australia. So come on, Australia, you got to step it up there, buddy. And
Joe Conjal says, hi, Rob and Joan. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Joe.
I hope you're feeling a lot better. That flu really is bad, isn't it?
My gosh. Noteworthy author podcasts in the area, Voice of Indie podcast with Beam Weeks and Gary G's. There's a little blurb at the end of our show that tells you how to get over to hear that right after. If you're listening to this or watching this live, it's on Wednesday night as well. Book World, The Great Escape with C.J. Peterson and Mike Clifton's another one you can check out, and you can find them anywhere if you need.
They're on Wednesday afternoons.
Yeah, Wednesday afternoon. So do you have anything else you want to talk about?
Mm-mm.
No? Oh, last week, Joan showed the ring that our granddaughter gave her at Christmas. This is my ring. It's good old Santa Claus, and it barely fits. That's about it.
She wrapped it herself.
It's very precious. So
Joe Conjal says, thank you. I'm feeling better, but still have a lingering cough. Yeah, I bet. Yeah, take it easy. You don't want it to develop into anything else. We appreciate you being here.
Sit back and write.
Yeah, just relax.
Keep the writing going. All right, so I think without much ado, why don't we bring in our author tonight?
Definitely.
Our guest is
wait a minute.
Steve Altier.
Hi, Steve.
Altier.
One second. Joy York.
Hi, Steve.
Hi, Joy. How are you feeling?
Hi, Joy.
Gosh, Joy's been under the weather too. I hope you're feeling so much better, and your husband too. We're glad that you're able to join us tonight, Joy.
Yeah, for sure. So, how are you, Steve?
I am good. First, Rob, Joan, thank you guys for having me on your show.
Thanks for being on the show.
getting a chance to talk about my work and what I'm doing.
Right.
Steve is right here in Tampa Bay where we are. So that's right. It's fun. Joy York says, thank you, getting there. Good. I'm glad to hear it. Let me bring up your brands here. Okay. I've got your books waiting in the wings.
So how did you start writing? What kind of got you rolling there?
Well, when I was a young kid, I mean, like a lot of kids today, I mean, I struggled with reading, and,
Oh,
and it was something that, and my parents never really encouraged it that much either. Like sit down and read a good book. My father was more into sports, and there was nothing wrong with that. I mean, but it was that one thing that he loved. But it was a friend of mine one day. He asked me to read a book. We were going to go to the movie theaters and watch this movie, and he's like, "You got to read the book. You got to read the book first." So I'm like, all right. So I started to read this book, and it was by an author that I just totally love. I got just about all of his work. His name is Stephen King. We all know him.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
The book at the time that I read was Carrie,
Oh, yeah.
and it was coming to the theaters. And I just like, how are they going to do all this stuff, that she does in this book and put it onto a screen? And it captivated me. That one book, it's all it takes is one book to change your life around. And at that point, I've just became fascinated with the written word. Um, and it was something that, I always wanted to do. I started writing little stories, and, they didn't make a lot of sense back then, but um, I still enjoyed doing it. And after high school, I joined the military and went off and ended up getting married and raising a family, and just kind of put a dream on hold, family first. And I had to have a job and take care of my family. So when my, kids all grew up and started moving out and going off to college and things like that, there was one night, and my mother-in-law, she came into town. She was visiting my wife, and I got sick, and it's not the first time I've been sick when she's got down here. So it
Hmm.
has nothing to do with it. It's just a coincidence of something that happened. But I got a really vivid dream, and at that point, I started telling my wife about it, and she was like, "Okay, okay." I said, "I got to write these stories down. I gotta get this out there, and I got to put this book on the market." And she was like, "Okay, sure." And after her mother was gone, and I'm sitting there every night writing, and one night I think she turned to me and she's like, "Who are you chatting with online?" I'm like, "I'm not chatting with anybody online. I'm writing my story. I told you I was going to publish a book." And at the time, I mean, that was like 13, 14 years ago. But it was the first book I ever wrote, which is We Can't Move at Christmas, which was a
Okay.
children's.
We've got that cover here. But first, Marjorie Deering says, an allergy maybe, Steve? LOL. Getting sick every time your mother-in-law is there.
Uh, no, not really. I mean, and a funny story, because it was my mother-in-law that actually introduced me to my wife.
Oh,
One
nice.
that connected us. But yeah, that was the very first book I ever wrote. We Can't Move at Christmas, middle grade chapter book. And again, that stems back to where I told you I struggled reading as a kid. Um, it's a very small, thin novella. It's got about 90 pages in it. There's some pictures. Just a good, wholesome family story about a young couple, young brother and sister that just sent their letter off, to Santa Claus right at Christmas. And dad comes home and he tells them, you know, we company's moving, we got to move at Christmas. And, the kids are like, no, we can't move at Christmas. I mean, how's Santa going to find us? And that's where it all kind of began. And father's quick on his feet. He just don't worry, kids. Santa's got this elite group of elves called the Family Moving Department, and they track kids moving all year long. So he's going to find you. But it's just a good, fun story. And again, it's just something that helps the kids that transition from that picture book into something smaller that they can actually feel like they've accomplished something, instead of giving a child something with 200 or 300 pages in it and they feel overwhelmed, like, I'm never going to finish this.
Was that what your dream was about?
Yeah, my dream was about these kids. At the time, the company I worked for, they were moving us out of Florida to Ohio. And they kept telling us, if we don't move, we're going to lose our jobs.
Yeah.
Okay, give up my job. I'm not moving. I'm not leaving the sunshine and the warm weather and going back to shoveling snow. I grew up in Pennsylvania. I don't want to go back to Ohio. I don't want to go back to Pennsylvania. I mean, I
We
love
have pictures of that too.
Yeah, I love that area, but not in, in the wintertime.
There you go.
Yeah, a little bit of winter up there, yeah.
Showing pictures.
The actual area that you lived in, right?
Those are his actual pictures.
Yeah, so those pictures that you're showing, I got off the from the Pennsylvania Historical Society, all three of those. And I grew up in the old dam keeper's house. So in 1969, my parents bought a dam keeper's house. It was up for auction. There was a flood years prior to that. It destroyed part of the dam, took out the old axe factory.
Is that house in the picture?
It is not. If you bring up that one picture, let me see, it was the first one that you showed.
The first one?
So if you follow that road going to your right, or no, to the left, I'm sorry, to the left.
In the back of the picture.
In the back or the front?
In the back.
In the back of the picture, there's a road there.
Yeah.
And you see where it kind of forks into two. We live just out of sight of that picture.
Okay.
There was a house.
Where the fork in the road is?
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha.
Small house down in there, and that's where we lived. But that was my playground as a kid. So a lot of, as we got to be teenagers, a lot of kids would be going to the playgrounds for swing sets and slides. I mean, me and my buddies, Mom always said, stay out of the factory. Don't go over there. You might get hurt. That meant we had to go there. Yeah. So, we had to go inside and check it out. And
what could go wrong?
Yeah. What could go wrong? Connie Cleary says, hello, everyone. Hi, Connie. Welcome.
Hello, Connie.
That is really interesting. That's really fascinating that you dreamed about these kids. And that's how you started writing.
Well, it's something I wanted to do as a kid. It's just life kind of sometimes gets, takes you on a different path. I just wanted to go back and follow my dreams. When the kids were gone, it's like, what am I going to do? I don't want to sit here and just watch TV all day.
Right.
So I started reading again. I, started buying more books and reading, got back into writing my stories. It was a process and quite the journey. And just, it's been a little over a year now, but I've signed a major contract with Four Horsemen Publications. They are a medium-sized independent publishing house. I love them guys to death. They've been treating me really well.
Do you like your editor?
Huh?
Do you like your editor?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. So they've assigned an editor. I'm using the same people every time.
Right.
So they get to know how I write, and see my patterns. I can see what they like and don't like.
Right.
It's been a pleasant journey. I'm really enjoying this. I've been writing now probably about 13, 14 years, been published for a little over 11. The first one I self-published, but then I ended up getting picked up by Dark Cloud Books. Well, I went through a author house for 2 books, and then was picked up by Dark Cloud Books, which is a very small independent publishing house that went out of business. And then Four Horsemen picked me up, and it's been just a godsend.
Well, that's good. Would you like to read from the first book first? Maybe you can tell us something about it, the camping trip.
Sure. So the camping trip, a lot of good things, a lot of bad things happen with, going on a weekend camping trip. And this book is set in the 1970s. So it starts off with a group of young guys. It's a father in the middle of a storm, and he is, he's got his 13 and 14-year-old son there with him. And at that point, the storm's raging on, the power goes out, and the kids are just like, what do we do? We have no electronics, no things like that. So in that scene, he's the father is just like, okay, well, it's time I share a secret with you. And he goes and tells him about what it was like growing up in the 70s. And that's where the book's based out of. But let me start off with reading a little bit from the very first chapter. The world outside sounded menacing as loud, thunderous cracks rained down on the home. Bright lights filled the night sky, and the gaps in the curtains allowed lightning strikes to race across the room, giving the illusion of figures dancing on the walls. Another flash, like the cracking of a whip, followed by thunder. The sound resonated and vibrated through the home. I watched my boys lunge from their chairs, running from window to window like a well-choreographed dance routine, trying to catch a glimpse of the outside world as the lightning display continued. The wind howled and whistled as it raced past the house. Thunder roared, followed by several lightning flashes. One too close for my comfort, the loud pop sent my boys spiraling back from the window. I peeked over my book and watched them bounce into the family room where I was sitting. My youngest son, 13-year-old Daniel, stayed close behind his older brother, trying to hide his fear. I knew Zach and Daniel had never experienced a storm like this. The room was large, quiet, and dimly lit by a single reading lamp behind me on my old reclining chair. On the walls, picture frames reminisced of family memories, a mixture of old and new. My television was mounted on the north wall, my chair and couch set facing that direction. The tall floor light behind me flickered as another lightning bolt rocked the windows. Heavy curtains hid the large bay window on the exterior wall. Faint glowing lights peeked through with each lightning flash. Large oak book cabinets filled with books flanked the windows. The wind roared louder, giving the illusion of a freight train passing by the house. As the storm grew in intensity, Zach and Daniel nervously looked at one another and began to stare at me, watching as I calmly sat in my chair, reading one of my many books. The howling winds grew louder and louder, and the rain pounded on the windows as another bright flash illuminated the room. Another loud crack, and the boys jumped once again. The lights flickered, going out, drowning the room in darkness.
Awesome. Okay, that was really good. I have a few comments and questions from the Peanut Gallery.
Why don't we save those until after the break?
Okay, you want to say,
Yeah.
all right.
Because those are going to take some
Rob
time.
says, save them till after the break, and we will get to your comments first thing, people. I promise.
All right, so we've got a short break. Nobody go away, and we'll be right back.
Good reading, by the way. Enjoyed it.
Great.
Many secrets are hidden within the darkness of the jungle. Now comes part 4 in the Jaguar series by retired Hollywood scriptwriter George Dispukes. In this saga, Brandon, Andrea, and Naja, the Black Jaguar, go deep into the Mato Grosso jungle on a mission to rescue 2 kidnapped children. During their journey, they encounter many dangers, including Yanomami Indians, bent on revenge for the murder of one of their warriors.
Return of the Jaguar is book 4 in the Jaguar series, starting with 2 faces of the Jaguar, the Lost City, and the Jaguar's Quest. All 4 are available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other bookseller websites worldwide. Return of the Jaguar is a must-read.
The clock is ticking. Can Gracie uncover the truth? Philip Pliant is the wealthy opportunist plastics dealer and CEO of Pliant Industries. He's also a master thief, creating a pervasive threat to the manufacturing infrastructure in the Caribbean islands markets. With the cartel as his stealth client, the naive city leaders have been seduced, enabling the production of more than three-dimensional building materials.
The expected profits are monstrous.
Is the art group, now led by Gracie and the family heirs, strong enough to win against this predator?
Can JJ's cats act on the root cause analysis in time?
Will Gracie be able to squash Pliant and the cartels?
Gracie never considered their lives would hang in the balance. The clock is ticking. 5, 4, 3.
It's every parent's worst nightmare. Police officer Madison Jackson awakes to discover her baby kidnapped from her crib. Was it revenge for someone she arrested, or something far more sinister? Madison's estranged husband is incarcerated in Supermax. As the second in command of a deadly Mexican cartel, did he issue the order to abduct their daughter? Bye, Baby, Bye, from author Kelly Marshall. Get your copy today.
Welcome back.
We are back.
That was a really great reading. I have a comment that I want you to see first. Irwin Nieto, Steve is awesome to meet in person. So
I know Irwin. I've met him a couple of times. He's been to a few of my shows, and he came to the last Barnes and Noble signing that I was at.
Awesome. We're glad that you're able to catch the show, Irwin.
Yeah.
The reading really brought you there. We were right there with those kids. It was really good. George Dismukes has a question. He says, okay, Steve, I ask everybody this. Marketing, do you do it? What tips do you have?
So marketing wise, with Four Horsemen Publications, they have a marketing team. And they do a lot of the marketing for me. All I'm supposed to do is social media.
You're lucky.
Well, you have to do
social. You still have to do social media.
Yeah, that's the lion's share of it.
That's the hard part. Yeah.
That is the hard part.
Marketing, they send us stuff like, hey, post these out there. Here's your videos when they have new releases.
Good.
They're good about that. I mean, there's some things I make myself and post out there. Not every post on social media can be about selling a book, buy my book, buy my book. You have to, hey, here's a picture of my lunch,
Yeah. You want to see what I'm eating today? Do they set up your book signings for you, or do you generate those yourself?
No, and I'll tell you, and you have to enjoy the journey as a writer. So when I first, and someone just asked me that this week, I sent out my newsletter like I always do the first of every month. And if you haven't, you can sign up for my newsletter by visiting my website, and we'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah.
But someone asked me, like, I did 21 appearances this past year in 2023. And they're like, how do you find all of these places to go? Now, my publisher sets up a few of them. They announce when they're going to be places. And if we want to be there, we can. They set me up with a couple of bookstores. But when I first started the journey, nobody knew me. How do I get my books as an independent author out into the hands of the readers? That's one of the big challenges. So I went online onto Facebook and I started looking for vendor groups. And I found that there was a lot of in mom and pop, small craft shows, art and craft festivals, just places like that you could go and spend minimal dollars to be there. And when I got there and started doing some of these shows, it was like every show that I went to, I learned something. And, okay, I need this, I need that, I have to do this. And, you continue to learn. Even today, here it is 12, 13 years later, I'm still learning things at shows when I do them. But I really don't do the outside events anymore. That was the biggest problem living in Florida. It gets too hot in the summer to be under a tarp. So I stepped it up after doing that for several years. I stepped it up and started going to indoor appearances like Comic-Cons, UFO, the Bigfoot festivals, any place, paranormal festivals, places at horror conventions, any place that I could fit into. But as a writer and trying to market your stuff, you have to find your niche. What works for you? So, I mean, if you go to a show, like I'm not going to take my horror books to a rom-con, because those people are there to buy romance.
Right.
And I've always thought that. Well, last year I was at a horror convention, and I know there was a Flirty in Tampa book convention going on here in Tampa. And I was like, yeah, it was much cheaper to be at the one in Tampa, but it was for romance. So a friend of mine showed up Sunday at the horror convention, and he said, man, I did Flirty yesterday in Tampa. And he's a horror writer. I'm like, you write horror? And he said, yeah. And he goes, and I sold out.
Wow.
He kept coming to my table saying, finally, someone other than romance.
Hey, good tip.
Good tip.
Good tip.
That is
So
a good...
next year I'm going to Flirty in Tampa. I'll see y'all there.
There you go.
We'll join you there. Joe
Yeah.
Concha says, hi, Steve. Were there challenges you had when you self-published that made you seek out a more traditional publisher?
Yes and no. I mean, so when I started out and when I started self-publishing, what I found was the quality, wasn't there. And I found myself, I had to pay editors, and some of those editors a good editor can be, $800 to $1,500. And finding the same one to work with over and over was, you had to get in line with them. And, that was a challenge, finding someone, because doing kids books, I wanted to put 6 or 7 pictures inside, and illustrators were expensive. So every time I'm releasing a self-published book, it cost me $3,000. And you're like, how am I ever going to make money at this? So I started seeking out more independent publishing houses that would do things for me. And a lot of them, there's some of the smaller houses, they offer programs where you can, they take everything all the expenses, and they foot that bill for you. So like they'll do 60% of it. If the illustrations were $500, they may only charge you $100. But they kept 60% of the royalties, which was only fair because they were putting up most of the money. So I'm like, okay, and that's fair. So I finally continued my search. And then when Dark Cloud Books went out of business, it was almost perfect timing. I was invited to Phantasm, which is a horror convention over in Orlando, by Four Horsemen Publications. And I found that kind of odd at the beginning, because I was like, they had booked 12 tables. They were bringing in their authors. They were going to put them out there and let them sell their products. And they reached out to me. I had met them at the Tampa Comic Con, probably a few months prior to that. And then they reached out to me and said, hey, we have an empty table. You're welcome to come over here and join us for the weekend.
Nice.
Okay.
I wouldn't say no to that.
And I got to meet, the senior editor and the CEO, COO, the chief operating officer. And it was a fantastic weekend. The biggest thing that happened was on Saturday night. They invited my wife and I to dinner with them. So we were getting ready to head over, and one of the authors sends me a text message and says, hey, sorry, I can't make it. And another one sent me a little message saying, I'm sorry, I can't make it either, but have fun. So we were walking over, because it was at a Carrabba's. It was just within walking distance of the hotel. We were walking there, and I walked inside, and the senior editor and the chief operating officer, they're like, hey, in case you haven't figured it out, this is a business meeting. We want to talk with you about bringing you on board. So 2.5 hours later, I left. I was feeling very confident. But they told me, I had to submit my work to them, and do not mention, don't talk about, Valerie told me to submit this, just submit my work. They said they reject about 88% of the submissions. A couple of weeks later, I heard back from them. They were wanting to talk with me about offering me a contract.
Awesome.
What they did for me was, I mean, it's still an independent publishing house, but they pay for everything, and they keep the bulk of the royalties. But I do get a nice commission for each sale. I don't get any type of large payments, but it's a way for me to actually make extra money and not have to foot all the bills out.
And
Pay
have
for
all the expenses. Yeah.
And all the work. And it's a lot of work, as we all know.
Well,
And, yeah, and I mean, you spend most of your time as a self-published or independent author, and I've always hated the term self-published,
Yeah, that's why we call it indie published.
and that's why I always kind of like indie publishing,
Mhm.
because I've read so many self-published books that were just horrible.
Mhm.
They don't take the time. I had a lady one time, and I won't mention the book or the author, came to me, asked me if I would, gave me a book and said, would I read her book and let her know what I think of it. So I started reading it. It was right at the height of the Twilight series, which my wife was really big on the Twilight series. I'm reading away at this book. It starts right off with this beautiful woman sitting in a beautiful bar. In walks a beautiful man with beautiful eyes. And I'm like,
Was it a beautiful day and a beautiful night?
I'm like, you've used beautiful 6 times in a page and a half. I couldn't go any further. And I'm
Wow.
like, and I said, well, who edited your book? And she goes, oh, I'm a teacher. I edit my own. Well,
Oh, you did
Cardinal,
a beautiful job.
you don't. I know myself when I write my story and I edit it myself. I give it to my wife. She reads through it. We make changes before I ever submit it to an editor. I mean, I do everything I can to get it to the best possible shape to turn it in, because the editors, I mean, they just use so much red ink. I don't know how they. I mean, the red ink. Invest in red ink, folks. That's what. Because
Connie Cleary, by the way, says, nice reading. She enjoyed that. Robert White, hello, Robert. First, Robert White says hi to you all from Australia. And he says, was she drinking her beauty away?
Sounds like it, doesn't it?
Oh, well, I can't say all of this. I will say part of it. George Dismuke says, sounds like a beautiful piece of, and we're not going to go any further. Yeah, just not good at all. Yeah. Oh, wow. It's funny that a teacher wouldn't, I mean, if you read books, I mean, you should know that you don't want to read a beautiful, 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 beautiful. We catch ourselves using the same word, and we'll go, wait a minute, I just used that like, 3 sentences ago. So,
let's change and find another word, another way to say that.
Yep.
It's
I mean, there's a lot of programs out there. I use Grammarly.
Yeah.
It helps to identify things like that, words that you use too much. And I really enjoy that. It helps me to change up. And I mean, I'm always looking for new words, even kind of funny, because when I read books, I always keep a little tablet and ink pen there. And I come across the word and I'm like,
I want to use that one.
That was a good way to put that. Yeah. Why not?
So I kind of jot it down, and then it gives me a chance to look at it myself and say,
Somebody
hey.
used a word on a game show we were watching the other day, and I filed it away up here. Now I can't remember it.
You should have written it down instead of filing it away. Joe, okay. Whoops. Joe Conjal said, do you plot your books or are you a pantser?
Okay, so I started off originally as a pantser. And the problem with being, what works for one person may not work for someone else.
That's true.
I'm more of a plot pantser.
Yeah, a hybrid.
New word there, a plotzer.
I call it a plantser, but
But so I take like 2 or 3 days when I'm writing a new story, and I will go through in chapter 1. I kind of want it to start like this and have this. Chapter 2, I want to talk about this.
Right.
A paragraph about each chapter. and I pretty much go start to finish how I want the book to flow. And it really helps me. I find it helpful. The current book I'm working on right now is The Return to Lizardville, and it'll be the third and final book in that series. But the key to all of that was when I was writing the second one, as following along with my plot, it helped me to write faster. And I wasn't, I avoided writer block. I knew what I wanted to say. Now I'm 7-8 chapters into this new book already, and it's kind of taken its own course. It's going a different direction than what I thought it would, but it's still fun. I'm loving what the characters are telling me and how I should, how this.
Yes, right. Exactly. Yeah, they'll take you in a different direction. We have 2 comments. One is from Robert White. If she was educated in the form of linguistics, then she should realize the words make the story, and $3,000 for pictures in the book. Can't the reader use their imagination? I don't think you were on earlier, and I'll show you what he's talking about. Let me get back there. He was talking about this. He was paying $3,000 for this, for chapter books for young children.
Not just the illustrators.
Not talking about his books like this.
And to do a cover you can buy covers for $200 or $300. But
yes.
I was putting 7-8 different pictures in there and hiring an artist who could do that for me. And they charge a couple $100 for a book. And so between editing and illustrations and typesetting, it adds up, and it costs me to put a book out there.
Joy York said, "Hi, say, hey Siri, give me a synonym for beautiful." Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Joy, she's right on the mark there.
Yep.
More and more. I use Google and Siri a lot.
I do too. It's like, what different way can I use this, And like you say, sometimes you'll read a book and you'll go, oh, I like the way that sounded, sometimes it'll be like, something different than a babbling brook, because that's kind of a trope. So if you hear something else that says the same thing, then you kind of feel good. Let's get people your information here. Okay, so Steve's website is stevealtier.com. That's pretty easy. And for those of you who are listening and not looking on the screen, it's STEVEALTIER. Okay.
And I was on your website today. It's a very well put together website. You did a great job on it. And also your links are on there for Facebook and YouTube and wherever else you have.
Sign up for the newsletter.
Your newsletter pops up there. Sign up. It doesn't leave you alone. So you'll see it. It'll pop up.
And his email is stevealtierbooks@outlook.com. So that's STEVEALTIERBOOKS, little @ OUTLOOK.
So let's do our book giveaway, and then we're going to have to dash off to the our last set of breaks, believe it or not.
Oh, Irwing has a question for you, but you know what? We're going to talk about that in the next segment after the next set of commercials, Irwing. We'd already planned that. So you can ask him those questions then.
Right. So our book giveaway is the first 3 people to email stevealtierbooks@AOL.com will win an autographed paperback copy of choice. Now, this is open to the U.S. only.
So, Irwing, if there's some paperback you don't have yet, if I were you, I'd start typing right now.
Yeah, type in there. And if you're listening to this or watching this next week, not watching the live stream here, go ahead and write to Steve and ask him. He may have not given everything away. You never know.
You never know. Anyway,
and I'm sure I'd like to hear from you anyway. So
yes, sign up for his newsletter, get to know him, ask him questions, find out where he's going to be next?
Okay, so let's, I think we better take our last break before we run out of time.
Yeah.
Today.
This being on FM radio is constricting.
It's good and bad. It's almost like having a publisher. Anyway, here we go. We'll be right back. Don't go away, folks.
Cracking the whip.
Paradise, my prison. Charlie Flint awakens from a deep sleep and finds himself alone on a tropical beach surrounded by a palm tree jungle and exotic animals. He cannot remember who he is or anything about his life. First, he must find food and build shelter and protect himself from hidden dangers. As his memory gradually returns, it reveals what a very flawed person he is. A man who made too many mistakes, made too many enemies. The implications of the truth are staggering. How did Charlie get there? And will he save himself? Paradise, My Prison is the riveting new suspense thriller from retired Hollywood scriptwriter George Dismukes. Paradise, My Prison by George Dismukes is available in jacketed hardcover, softcover, and all ebook formats worldwide.
It's 1919, and Eric Laska returns from the war in Europe. Two new enemies await him in the small coal mining town he calls home. One is a threat to his relationship with Rebecca, the love of his life. The other, a bloodthirsty beast, is stalking the mining town residents. The townspeople suspect Eric of one of the killings. An old man and Rebecca's 11-year-old sister have seen the beast, but only Eric believes their story. To protect the town and clear his name, he's forced to prove the werewolf exists. Available on Amazon. The Horror Within by Marjorie Swift Doring.
Step into the captivating world of skullduggery, where a family of isolated peasant copyholders finds themselves thrust into a web of danger that threatens their very existence. Set against the tumultuous backdrop of the English Reformation, this meticulously researched historical mystery unfolds with a cast of both lovable and despicable characters, immersing you in a fully realized world that's both utterly believable and fantastically unbelievable. Author Paul Rushworth Brown weaves a spellbinding narrative that transports you to Yorkshire, England, in the 16th and 17th centuries, offering an authentic and gritty portrayal of peasant life. The pages come alive with vivid descriptions, crafting an atmosphere that pulls you deeper into a story of crime, murder, and suspense like no other.
Hi, I'm Paul Rushworth Brown, author of Skullduggery, Red Winter Journey, and Demon Courage, just recently released. I hope you enjoy Skullduggery, the second edition. Cheers.
So Joe Conjal has a question, Rob and or Joan. When the podcast is on the radio, do they use the commercials that you do, or do they use their own during the breaks? Actually, they use our commercials. So all of our sponsors not only go out on all of our podcasts and on our YouTube, et cetera, but also they go out over the FM radio. So that's really cool. People get to hear it. And Robert asks you, George, how are you doing today, George? Which is lovely. Thank you. Because Robert had his leg amputated earlier this year, so he knows. Joe Conjal says, that's awesome. It is awesome.
It is. It's a win-win.
Yeah. And we really love that we're able to get all of you authors out to so many different places.
Did we?
Oh, yes. This is a good point that Robert White said. I could not believe a book I received from the U.S. cost $20.60 for postage. To be here in Queensland, the book alone only cost $20.
Right.
I know, Robert. And the truth is, Robert, that now to post a book to Canada just to go across the border real quick is over $25. So it's like crazy. That's why U.S. only.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Yes, me too. I am sorry too.
So, what you got coming up?
I'm sorry, that was Irving's question. Let me bring up his comment here. Let me find it, Irving. Here we go. Steve, any books you are working on right now?
So first, let me say this, that 2023 was a tough year for readers for me because I had published the Lizardville Ghost Stories, The Camping Trip, Jimmy's Curse, and The Ghost Hunter all came out prior to that. When I signed with the Four Horsemen, they wanted to rebrand them under their own name. So I've worked with them to rewrite some of them, tweak the stories a little bit, and better editing with them. So they all came out in 2023. So I did not have anything new for the readers in 2023, and that was, I appreciate everyone who has stuck with me through that. But in 2024, I've already finished up. It's one of the side stories. It's called Old Man Smithers. Old Man Smithers is a character in The Camping Trip that you'll meet. He's a crotchety old man. He despises the boys, and he just wants to seek revenge on them for some reason. So Old Man Smithers is set to release the first half of the year. They were talking about April or May, but no later than June for that. It's already done. It's into the publisher. It's in the editing process and illustrations right now. And so we are expecting that to come out. And if you follow my newsletter, I will be talking about that, or follow me on social media. I'll be talking about it very heavily as soon as I have an exact date and can share more with you. I'm currently writing, and that is book 2. Old Man Smithers is book 2 in the Lizardville side stories. So the main is the Lizardville Ghost Stories, which was book 1, The Camping Trip. Book 2 was Jimmy's Curse. And I'm currently writing book 3, which is going to be titled The Return to Lizardville. So, like I said earlier, in 1970, Johnny and his brother Buck and his friend Parker set out on a camping trip for the weekend, and Parker wanted to tell the old legends of the Axe Factory murders, and by telling that story, he woke up the spirit world. And strange, mysterious things began to happen. And so the kids spend most of their time trying to figure out, how do we get these ghosts back where they belong? So at the end of Jimmy's Curse, they think they've, figured it all out. But now that John is now older and he has a 24 and 25-year-old son, they're going back for a family reunion on a return to Lizardville. And his boys, and other relatives that are there, the younger crowd, don't always believe everything that they've been told. So they set out on their own to seek the truth. And little do they realize they wake up the spirit world.
All right.
Just like their parents have.
That's great.
It'll be a fun one. That'll be coming out later, the second half of the year in 2024.
Awesome. Now, Joe Conjal says, Steve, any plans to do more kids' picture chapter books?
Absolutely. So we released Over the Falls was the only one I released last year. We have Blast Off coming out, and that is already set for March 3rd. You can do the pre-orders. We don't have pictures of Blast Off, I don't think yet, but there are.
Over the Falls and Adventures in Italy.
Yeah, Adventures in Italy. I got a little bug flying in front of me here.
It's an orb.
No.
Sorry.
I woke up the spirit world talking about it.
Wrong show.
Adventures in Italy. The picture you showed was the original story that I did about 11, 12 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that has been rewritten. There's almost 5,000 new words added to the story. It really spices everything up and changed the whole outlook of that book. That'll be released later on in the year. I think they were talking like September.
What's the age group on that one?
All of my kids' books, the Gabby and Maddox Adventure series, are for 6 to 10-year-olds.
6 to 10. Okay.
90 to 100 page books, just novellas. And then the ghost stories, the Lizardville Ghost Stories or the Lizardville side stories, all of those are more for the 12 and up. Few things that I will say, they're more of that spine tingling, edge of your seat suspense. I don't really get into a lot of horror. If you're looking for something with lots of blood and guts, this is the wrong book for you. I don't use cuss words. I just don't believe in it. I think I can write a good story without that.
Yeah.
Now, Robert White says, Old Man Smithers, the years after retirement from Mr. Burns.
Okay. Yeah.
Old Man Smithers.
So I don't watch a lot of TV.
I know you don't, but that was a funny comment.
Yeah.
Erwin Nieto says, awesome, can't wait. Steve, were the characters in your books like Bobby Parker or Jimmy Brooker based off of people that you knew?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, and that's all he's going to say about that.
So when I grew up in a small town in Mill Hall, Pennsylvania, we lived on was Lizardville Road. And there wasn't a whole lot of people there. I mean, maybe 1,000 or so people. And there's not much, there's not that many more people there now. I mean, it's a small community, but a lot of the guys that I I still keep in touch with them today. Most of them don't read, so they don't realize they're in the books.
That works
So
for
that
you.
works, yeah.
I mean, they've called me. I got a phone call one time from a friend of mine, and it's actually the guy who is Parker in the book. But he called me, and it was a Sunday morning, and he goes, "Hey, we were talking about your books. Is your book about the white monkey?" And I'm like, "The what?" And he goes, "Yeah, I mean, there's a white monkey that lives out here in the woods, ghost monkey." And he goes, "Was it about that?" And he goes, "Because we saw the white monkey this morning."
Wow.
Oh my goodness.
"Where are you at?" And he goes, "Oh, we're at the bar." I'm like, "It's 11:30 in the morning. You're already at the bar? No wonder you're a ghost, you know?"
No wonder you're seeing white monkeys in the woods.
There you go.
Marjorie Deering said, Steve, children's books and horror novels, quite a combination. How do you explain that mixture? And we've only got how many?
We only have
minutes?
about 3 minutes, 2 minutes left.
2 minutes left.
Okay. So I started off writing children's middle grade chapter books, just good, wholesome family stories. And that was kind of where I wanted to focus at. And again, like I said, you call them horror books, but they're more mystery suspense. And I wanted to write, so I figured if I can hook a young reader, someone who's 6 to 8, 10 years old, and they start reading some of my books and they like them because they're travel adventure stories. And if they like that, maybe they'll step up and move into the young adult versions that I write, because those are for 12 and up. Now, a lot of adults have read my stories. They enjoy them because it takes them back to their childhood or to a different time frame in the 70s. Most of them are in the 60s and 70s. But, that's how I kind of transitioned into that. And kind of a real quick story. When I was at Barnes & Noble one day doing a book signing for my Blast Off book, and that's been rewritten and coming out soon, there was a group of young boys come up to me. They're like, "Dude, this is baby stuff. What do you got for us?" And probably teenagers. So I was like, okay, I need to step my game up a little bit. But again, I try to hook you when you're 6 to 10, and then hopefully you'll transition into some of the mystery suspense, if that's the kind of genre you like.
And I think he goes to horror cons, and that's why he was talking about horror, because he does ghost stories.
Right.
Not because he writes, horror. Marjorie says, I did a switch too. I'm all for it. Marjorie, I think we ran her commercial. She does horror.
Yeah, her horror book is
her horror book is horror. It's
you saw
for
the
such a nice lady,
yeah,
too.
Yeah. Anyway, we're going to
gosh.
have to close out here.
Yeah.
And thank you so much.
This has been great, you guys.
Yeah, this has been great. And now we've got a new contact here in Tampa, too, which is really even better.
I know.
So it's a win-win for us, right?
We're going to have to step up our book signing.
Right.
Joe Conjal said, great show tonight as always. Thank you, Steve. And of course, Rob and Joan. Yeah, thank you for being here.
So we're going to move you over like this. There you go. Stay right where you're at until we come back to you. Joy says, great show. Paul Hollis, thanks, great show. And Robert White, have a good night all. Thanks for joining us from down under there. And,
love you, Rob.
Let's see. Next Wednesday, right here, is Psychic John Russell. So he knows whether you're going to be here or not.
He does not.
No,
He's
he doesn't.
Not that kind of
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, be sure to join us. That'll be awesome. Do you have anything else you'd like to talk about?
No, I do not. I
Okay.
think we missed one more comment, maybe real quick here. Nope, I think we got it all. Have a good night, all.
Yep. So I think we're good. And let's see, how do we get out of here? Oh, like this. Until next time.
That's all, folks.
Bye.
Live every Wednesday, your Voice of Indie hosts Beam Weeks and Stephen Gees welcome authors, musicians, publishing industry pros, artists, and assorted creative guests for an exciting interactive hour. Call in during the show or post questions and comments on Twitter for responses in real time. Meet your favorite indie creators, learn inside tips, network, and promote your work. The link for each week's show is pinned on Twitter atop @VoiceOfIndie. And you can receive the link every Wednesday morning in your inbox by subscribing to our newsletter at freshinkgroup.com. Check out Voice of Indie every Wednesday on Blog Talk Radio and catch hundreds of episodes archived everywhere from our websites to our YouTube channel and Spotify.
Thank you for joining us here on Meet the Author. Make sure you stay up to date with our show by clicking like, follow, and share. And you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, and more. See you next time on WLFE-DV.com.